trust in the science, because everything I've shared with you today is supported by science, and trust in your people. Because the reason we fall victim to all those lies is because we don't trust our people. Wow. There has been an enormous amount of change in my life of late. Perry mentioned it. I, as of February, retired as a partner from EY. I had sold my company People Firm to them in 2019. Then there was this little thing called COVID, and now I am officially retired. Literally last Friday, at 5 o'clock, my husband and I stepped away from our house of 22 years. We packed up all of our belongings and shipped them off to 2 new houses. This was the house we raised our children in, kind of a big moment. In March, my colleagues threw me a retirement party. And so I've been having a lot of conversations, even people that weren't there reaching out, talking about, things that we've gone through, the past, all of that. So it's been a lot of reflection. And I feel like I've been a little bit of an anthropologist in my own life, because with all this moving, I've been digging through my files and my piles and all that. And okay, I'll fess up, I'm a pack rat. And I dug up this baby. What is that? That is the binder that I received for my boot camp of consulting in 1990. Look at that bad boy. Can you imagine if you handed that to a young graduate today? What would she say? Holy moly. Well, the fact that I still have it tells you I still value it. There's good stuff in that thing. That thing has driven my career for, yes, if you're doing the math, 34 years. 34 years of consulting. Now, over those 34 years, I have probably worked for, I've lost count, hundreds of clients. And they've ranged from global oil producers to major brands in consumer and retail, high techs, government agencies, even private companies in forestry, potatoes, beef jerky. I'm not kidding. I've done all those. And as you go in and you dig through all of that, it does really recall a lot of history and a lot of trends and a lot of learning, and a lot of pain, and a lot of joy, and all those things. So when Mihai called me and said, hey, Tamra, we really want you to do a keynote, but can it be something new? Bring something new. And I was like, okay, let me think about that. And I started thinking about, those learnings and those trends. And I thought, over my 34 years, there's these darn lies that organizations tell themselves, and they are persistent, and they continue to show up. And as a consultant, I've battled them for these 34 years. So what I thought I'd do today is walk you through some of these lies and give you my perspective on them. Now, some of them are platitudes. Thank you. That's my bagman, my husband, my love of my life. Some of these are platitudes that we say, but we don't mean. Some of them are frankly just wrong. So let's go through them. And then we're going to anchor them under 4 themes. We're going to start with strategy. All right, number 1. This has to be number 1. Our people are our greatest asset. Or the new version of that, we put humans at the center. This sounds great, and it gets tossed around globally. I've heard it in Asia. I've heard it everywhere. But as soon as times get tough, as soon as we have to make really hard decisions, do we put people in that decision with the weight of our greatest asset? No, we don't. Too often we don't. And we tend to follow other paths which do not give humans the focus that they need. Some of you might be surprised by this one. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Why am I saying that's a lie? Okay, well, number 1, this gets attributed to Peter Drucker. Everyone's heard this quote, right? It's been overused. Peter Drucker never said it. There is absolutely no facts that Peter Drucker said this. In fact, as people have looked at it, they said, this isn't words he would use. This isn't his language. So number one, he never said it. But number two, it gets really interpreted incorrectly. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Here's the thing. When I4CP looked at the 5 domains of high performance, the number one is strategy. Number one is strategy. You have to have a clear strategy. It has to be understood by your people. It has to be compelling. It has to get to their heart. It has to be spoken by your leaders consistently and acted upon. And that is, my friends, a rare thing. Frequently, leaders don't say the same thing. They don't even believe it in the same ways. And that causes all sorts of mayhem within organizations. Now, I'm not saying that culture isn't really important. It's number 2 in the drivers. So we definitely need to put a lot of focus on both culture and strategy. But I contend we need a new saying. Let's put this one to bed. And maybe we could go old school. We could go with Edgar Schein's old statement of culture determines and limits strategy. That's from his 1985 book. It's a good one. I really like Sean Parr's quote. He says, culture is the environment in which your brand and strategy thrive or die a slow death. I really like that one. Or my good friend Marcus Scott, who helped me form People Firm, he used to say, if you can develop a compelling and concise strategy fueled by a healthy culture, you can eat anything you want to. That's how Marcus would put it. All right, the last one is love isn't a business strategy. One of my favorite clients rewrote their values, and they came down to 2 values. They're a healthcare organization, and one of them was just love. And it was so interesting, the debate that fueled within the organization. Is love a business strategy? Is love something that we should talk about at work? Well, I think so. I say heartily yes. If we create cultures of love, then we truly are putting people at the center. Then we're creating environments where people can thrive and can do their best work and can collaborate and can join forces and can care for each other. So I think it's really important to do that. And I've been inspired by this book, Love as a Business Strategy. And this is one of the quotes that I pulled from it. Theoretical models of corporate structure and employee behaviors will never yield a living, breathing, and adaptable culture of love. When you lead with the numbers, you neglect the people behind them. Those are those tough decisions. But when you lead with people, you allow the numbers to take care of themselves. I fundamentally believe this. 34 years of consulting, watching it happen. All right, let's go to number 2, talent. Anybody who has read my books or looked at my content on performance management or feedback will not be surprised by this. We are a pay-for-performance company. How many of your organizations declare you are a pay-for-performance company? Quite a few. How many of you believe it? Yeah. I can't tell you how many CEOs or CHROs have said to me, Tamra, by God, we're a pay-for-performance company and we're going to stick with it. And then when I dig in and look at the data, I find that we're talking 2% difference in their differentiations. I have one organization that was just really wanted to stick to that 5-point bell curve, really insisted that was going to drive those ratings, were going to drive the differentiation they want. When we looked at it, you know what we found? The difference between a 5 and a 3? $9 a paycheck. $9. Do you know how much energy went into creating that $9 differentiation? Such a waste. So we say it, but it's usually not true. Secondly, there we go. For this audience, I probably don't need to say much about this, but training does not equal growth and development. We get in all sorts of debates about training budgets. Doesn't matter. What matters is how we lead, how we coach our people, the conversations our teams have, how we build learning into every single day. To become a deliberately developmental organization is work, but it's meaningful work. Because if you want to drive the performance of your organization, grow your people. It's that darn simple. Grow your people, your performance will grow. All right, I did write a book on feedback, so of course I have to talk about this one. Feedback is about fixing people. All right, deep in our souls, leaders and organizations believe this. They may not fess it up always, but they believe it. And you hear it in the words that they use. You hear it in things like the labels they put on feedback: constructive feedback, corrective feedback, hard feedback, right? We get all these labels to it because we're trying to fix everybody who isn't doing things exactly the way that we think they should be done. But this isn't what feedback should be about. And frankly, when we first started doing a lot of the work in performance management, we figured out we can't fix performance management unless we fix feedback. And then I tried to actually eradicate feedback. I tried to cross the word out from my performance management book and realized I can't do that either. So what Laura and I did in the second book, in the feedback book, is we actually created a new definition. And this is the definition that we offer. Feedback is clear and specific information that's sought and extended with the sole intention of helping individuals or groups improve, grow, or advance. Sole intention, sought as well as extended, because we think the truth is drive a seeker culture. Drive a culture where your people are seeking the feedback that they need to support the growth that they want. And so when we do that, we can really shift the way we think about feedback, and we can step away from those labels. I don't need to label it constructive, productive, redirective, as long as it's this. And if you're about to extend feedback to somebody, check in on this. Laura likes to say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Make sure you're really extending feedback that has the sole intention of helping somebody improve, grow, or advance. And when we do that, what we realize is feedback is not about fixing people, it's about inspiring potential. It's like Susan was saying, it's about finding that potential in people and unhooking it. And you know how we do that best? We help people understand their strengths, their superpowers. We celebrate the great work that they do. Secondly, it's not the leader's agenda. It's not the yell, tell, sell, let me tell you what you're doing right, let me tell you what you're doing wrong kind of thing. It's a growth agenda. What's your growth intent? How do I help you lean into that? How do I help you build the skills and the experiences you want to get there? It's not an event. It's not the annual review. It's not the big sit down with the box of Kleenexes in the middle of the table. It's none of that. It flows as part of every day. It's the way we wrap up a meeting. It's the way we check in after we've had a conversation. It's all those things that we do that create feedback, so we forget that it's even feedback. It's just the way we work around here. And it's not a power play. It's not about me telling you what's right or what's wrong. It's a team sport. So in our book, we talk about seekers, receivers, and extenders of feedback. We all play all three roles. We all participate in it. It's not a hierarchical, rank-driven experience. It's a team sport. All right, number 3, organizations. Hierarchy and structure equal efficiency. This is a lie we like to tell ourselves, particularly when we like to, build fiefdoms. The more people I have, the more power I have. If that's what's going on in your organization, that's a big old lie. This is one of those places, so one of my absolute favorite quotes, I use it a lot, is Daniel Pink's quote where he says, there's what science tells us and what organizations do. What's interesting about this one is science has told us for years and years and years that light structures outperform heavy structures, hands down. Self-directed teams outperform structured teams. If we just empower our people with that clear strategy, give them the right guardrails, they can do amazing things if we give them the freedom that they need. We have the right managers, and they are prepared to lead. Does anybody feel like this is really true in your organization? Is this a concern for anybody? In 2018, at the HR Congress that we did in Belgium, I spoke on what we called the manager dilemma. And this is the manager dilemma. It's this idea that we have too many managers that we've promoted for the wrong reasons, and then we've ill-prepared them for the roles. And almost every organization I go in has this problem. It's pervasive. And it's complicated by line number 3, which is compensation should follow rank. So what happens is we have a great manager who's brilliant at their discipline, at their job, or a great person who's good at their job, and we want to pay them more, so we promote them to manager, rather than having some other compensation mechanism that gives them the pay that they need for the great work that they're doing, and we go find people who really want to manage. There's an alternative way to fix this, but we tend to get stuck in this loop. And so this idea that we have the right managers and they're prepared to leave, we really need to step away from this. And this isn't an easy fix. This is a tough one, because this means really stepping back and rethinking the way you structured your organization, the way you're selecting leaders, and what leadership means in your organization. So here's my quick steps on how do you get going with this. First, you got to pick the right model. So we want to step away from that hierarchy of line number 1. We want to simplify it down. We want to create lighter structures within the organization. And I highly recommend looking towards agile team models. How do we create models where teams and people can flow in and out and doing their best work, and you can put the right people in the right teams at the right time? Secondly, you've got to get real with the role. Better Works just produced a great piece of research on HR, and what they found was 64% of managers lack clarity about people managers lack clarity of their role. 64%. Number didn't surprise me at all. Because when I go out and look at organizations, a whole bunch of people haven't really clearly defined what is the role of a people manager. How much time are they supposed to be coaching their people? How much time are they supposed to be still doing their discipline? What's their coach versus player split? What's expected of them? What does great look like? How do we celebrate them? A lot of these things haven't been answered within organizations. And then we don't give them the capacity. We overload them with activities and admin and all sorts of stuff. We don't give them the capacity to do it. And as I said, we don't really ready them for their job. So what we need to do is step into a process where we start to select the people who are really going to be right for this role, who want to do this role. You know, Laura and I always say, nothing about me without me. Don't put a person in a people manager role if this isn't the job they aspire to do. Include them in that conversation. Help them think about what their future is and pick the right people for the job. Okay, productivity is our 4th topic. Up number 1 is maybe, technology will solve it. How many of you have heard this one in your organizations? Don't fret, technology will solve it. And that goes hand in hand with this idea that standardization equals optimization. This is particularly dangerous in the talent and people world. Secondly, high pressure equals high performance. All right, I'll confess, in a short amount of window, high pressure can drive performance. But as a sustained strategy over a long time, we really fall into this trap of fear. And of course, Amy Edmondson would tell us that fear is the greatest capacity killer in our organizations. So high pressure for a short time, maybe. As a sustained strategy, no thank you. That's really not going to drive the performance you want. And then this is the raging debate we've been having since COVID, right? Remote equals lower productivity. Well, what we saw early on was just the opposite, that when people were working remotely, productivity went up. And then over time, it's been kind of trying to figure out a stabilization. And we as leaders, we like to have black or white. You know, early on it was like, everybody's going to stay home. We're never coming back to the office. And now it was like, okay, now we all need to come back to the office, and we need to be there 3 days a week, Tuesday through Thursday. None of these are the right strategies. We really need to find what's the right equilibrium in that. And we need to help our people determine, when do I need to get together? Because there are times, innovation, learning, collaboration, that is better when we are physically together. And there are times when we are more productive when we are apart. We need to trust our people to figure that out, give them the right environments to come together and collaborate, and give them the freedom to determine the best approach to drive to the outcomes we've clearly stated for them. So one little more minute on this technology will solve it, and standardization and equals optimization. I said this is particularly dangerous in people and technology spaces. Here's why. We like to take this cookie-cutter approach. Performance management's a great place where we do this. And we like to make one process for everybody in our organization. This makes absolutely no sense when most of us have organizations that are highly diverse. Do you think, so Jeff and I were just at the Seattle, and I said, we did work for the Port of Seattle, and I said it was one of these places where we really talked about this, because we talked about the bus drivers who drive the buses around the airport, and we talked about the people who contract multi-million-dollar businesses for the Port of Seattle. Should we use the same performance management process for the bus driver as the person who does the million-dollar contract? I don't think so. Or for the manufacturing facility in China versus the engineers in California? I don't think so. So we really need to think about the diversity of our workforce segments and the people that are doing the work and the types of work that they're doing, and create solutions that are nuanced and custom fit to them. Because if we don't do this, what we do is we end up undermining the whole thing. We sort of peanut butter it out, we compromise for everybody, and nobody gets a good solution. So we really need to think more about how we do customization. And when it comes to the technologies, particularly under our talent and people processes, again, when we pick the ERPs, the human capital management systems that are just the vanilla systems, it really forces us up into solutions that don't necessarily fit our strategy, our people strategy, what we're wanting to do. And again, this is from the Better Work study, where they found that HCMs are 70% more effective when combined with purpose-built solutions. We really need to be more bold, particularly as people leaders, in asking for technology that will deliver what we want, and not just settling for these generic solutions. Okay, so stop strategy, talent, organization, and people. Let's stop with the lies. I'm looking to all of you to help me put these lies to bed, to boldly go out there and fight for something different. We're going to send these all away, and we're going to start with something new. We're going to start with strategy that is clear, that's concise, that's compelling, that speaks to the heart of our people, where leaders speak with one voice, where they act in coherence with that strategy. And it truly, truly puts people at the center. It leads with love. That's what we're about. Talent practices that prioritize growth. If you want to drive performance of your people, focus on growth. Create language for growth in your organization. What's your growth intent? Where are you going? How do I help? This needs to become the way you talk within your organization. Give autonomy to teams to do their best work. Create models that lets them make the right decisions within the frameworks and the structure you've given them. Clear strategy allows for this autonomy. Let's lean into rewards and recognition that are frequent and connected to the impact that an individual made. If you want to hear a lot more about this, come to my session later this morning, because we're going to talk a lot about rewards and how we can step into more frequent and impactful rewards. And then finally, trust in the science, because everything I've shared with you today is supported by science, and trust in your people. Because the reason we fall victim to all those lies is because we don't trust our people. We don't put them at the center, and we don't trust that they are the amazing people we thought they were when we hired them. But we need to reverse that, and we really need to anchor everything in love and trust. That's it from me. Thank you, guys.